Good evening and welcome to the happenings in Medfield. As you may be aware, over the months here at Medfield TV, we have the opportunity of sitting with one of the selectmen and the press to discuss the happenings in Medfield, their own personal views, their own thoughts and theories relative to that. So it's always my pleasure to introduce Mr. Pete Peterson, the Selectman, and Mr. Josh Perry with the Hometown Weekly. Nice to have you, gentlemen.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for having us, Rick.
So we'd like to begin, and as you normally do, Pete, put a format out. Let's first talk about communication.
What we have in front of us are the Selectmen goals for the year 2014 through 2015, even though it doesn't say that. There's a typo there. But and the first major topic that we had on our goals was communication. And the first on that is to promote and encourage a collegial supportive atmosphere for all the volunteer committees and boards in town. And I think that we do that, that everybody treats each other with respect and deference. So I think that generally works pretty well. Our second item was to implement a push system to get residents what town information there is at the townhouse. And this is one of my favorite issues, because one of the things that I found when I became a selectman was that there was a huge amount of information inside the townhouse that just never got out to the people. And the press covers some of that, and they write some of the stories, but there's a lot of information that doesn't get into the newspapers. And so that I think that it's good for the town to have a system whereby they can physically push that information out in an electronic format to the residents, so that the residents can sign up to get information about, for instance, whenever there's a change on the town website, the person should get a notice that there's been a change and an opportunity to click on a link and get a copy of the agenda or the minutes or whatever it is that has been added to the town website. That's the sort of thing that I see as something that's very user-friendly for the residents, that we should be providing to them. You can go as a citizen, you can sign up for a daily email that lists all of the town board meetings for that day. I get them. I find them very useful in case I've forgotten something hasn't gotten into my calendar. And in the email, if you click on the board, it'll take you through that link to the town website where that meeting is described. You can click on the PDF link and get the agenda for the meeting. So that it's a good way for the town, in a very automatic way, to provide the residents with this information. That's an example of the system that I'm talking about, where it would just be an automatic thing that information goes out to the people. The big information on the town website are the agendas and the minutes. Occasionally there are reports that are done too.
Very, very, very important, because knowledgeable for the public. Mm-hmm. And that's where the press comes in. I know, Josh, that I have read the Hometown Weekly, and you cover a multitude of things. But page after page of what's going on is pretty difficult. If you'd like to say anything relative to communication, how that you, as a paper editor, and the selectmen can formulate and coordinate an activity so that it's constantly before the public?
Well, I think that the efforts on the part of the town to put this information out there, whether it's the emails that get sent, the information that's up on the town website, I think is very important. And it's great for the residents of the town, but it's also great for us in the press as well, because it keeps us, it's easier to keep tabs of what's going on at town hall, because as Pete mentioned, there's quite a bit going on that even as you try to stay involved and you're trying to stay up on everything that's happening, there are still some things that can sort of slide under the radar. But I think the town has done a great job of improving that aspect of it and getting the information out there. For instance, this morning, Town Hall lost power this morning, and on my way into work, I was able to see that on Twitter that the announcement had been made that there was problems at Town Hall, and then that information can then be disseminated out to the public through whether it's through the media or through selectmen or town officials. Any way that you can get the information from Town Hall out to the residents is obviously is a big plus.
Very important, Josh. And I know I have watched the selectmen meetings and also been there, and I know the selectmen, Pete and others, have a plate full. I'm going to move on to one thing. We talked about communication. Now let's talk about, within that category, planning.
Planning, on the selectmen's goals for this coming year, the first one is to develop a town-wide master plan. And that's a question of really just hiring a firm so that at the annual town meeting in April, we would have to set aside the monies. I understand that it's somewhere around $150,000 to $175,000 to hire the planners to actually implement the plan. I know that Sarah Raposa, the town planner, was intended to ask the capital budget committee for the monies to do that master plan in 5 separate increments. I'm encouraging her to ask for it all at once so that we can do the master plan sooner than later. I'd rather not wait 5 years to do it. I think that it's important to have that town-wide master plan so that we know that what we want to do with the different parcels of town land that we own, what sort of uses we want to have in what part of town, how we want to get to certain of our goals, such as building the new facilities. We're pretty well down the road on the public safety building. The highway garage is having its official opening this coming Saturday. They're going to cut the ribbon. I think it's 10 to 2, I think, is when people are invited to come, and the ribbon cutting's at 11 at the highway garage. I think they're hot dogs and popcorn, so I encourage people to go to that and take a look around the new garage. But I think that beyond the municipal buildings, we also want to plan for things like the affordable housing and where that would go if we want to try to get to our 10% affordable housing threshold, and that would then allow us to avoid 40B projects popping up wherever the developers want to put it rather than where we as a town want to have them located. We're currently getting that 40B on West Street on industrially zoned land that the town has set aside for industrial uses, but it's going to be residential apartment use instead. With 40B, you could have someone buy a couple acres of land somewhere and put up a 16-acre, not a 16-acre, but a 16-unit development next to a couple residential homes, and that's the sort of thing that we want to prevent. So that if we can get an affordable housing plan with and identify lands in town where we can put those types of facilities. One is the land that's available next to Tilden Village. We really should be developing more housing for seniors on that land. And there are other parcels of land around town that in my mind, I think we should be looking at for affordable housing. We especially have a shortage of housing for older residents in town, that a lot of the people that want to downsize tend to leave town, and I think that's very unfortunate. So that if we could plan for that sort of housing in town, and these are sorts of plans that are going on in the thinking about what is going to happen at the hospital, and there's a separate master planning process that is going on that's already started now a couple months ago about the hospital development and what is going to be recommended to happen there. There's a citizen committee that is, in fact, over the past couple months has gotten organized and is taking the first steps towards their official planning process. They're putting out a request for proposals to get a planning firm to come in and guide them through the planning process and to do the bulk of the work to do the planning for them. And the goal is to have that planning process done within a year so that we can go to town meeting in a year and a half's time and with a proposal to actually change the zoning at the hospital and have a development up there, reuse it.
You know, I find, and you mentioned it earlier, Pete, affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Situations, and I have the opportunity and I enjoy it, sit and listen to seniors. And a lot of them, and one in particular, her children have left. Her husband, unfortunately, has passed away. And she had said, no, I've got a large house, but I want to stay in Medfield. But I look around and the prices are exorbitant. I can't afford it. And I readily agree with what you said. That area next to Tilden Village is available. It belongs to the state, but it is available. It would be, once recommended and approved, it would be great to keep the seniors in Medfield.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the most important things that I believe all of you gentlemen on the Selectman Board feel. Keep the seniors here. So
Yes, absolutely. I think it's the right thing to do for as a society, that we want to try to encourage people who have been residents of our town to stay, and we want to offer them different living opportunities if that's what they want to go to, so that there are the appropriate sized living opportunities, there are the appropriately priced living opportunities. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of those smaller, less expensive units in town that we probably should to be able to keep these people. I mean, these are our citizens who are part of the fabric of our community, and we would like to keep them. I think from a very selfish standpoint too, the town has a financial interest in trying to keep seniors in town because of the fact that the seniors are really use fewer town services from a dollar value standpoint than other residents. And so that from a very selfish financial standpoint, I think the town has a financial interest in keeping older people in town. And so that I think it makes sense for us as a town to spend some money on services that will keep these older people in town.
it's a good thought, Pete, because actually, talking to the seniors, as I have, they want to stay. But unfortunately, they look at the prices of some of the homes that have now been built. They can't afford it.
Yeah.
And so that's the situation you're.
And there's a lot of discussion in the planning for the hospital, both at the visioning session that was done last winter, and also at these early planning meetings from the current master planning committee. I think that people are expressing the concept that you can, at the hospital site, build some of this housing that is for that is for older people, that is smaller units, and so hopefully will be at a price point that'll be better for people to get into. I mean, it's an opportunity. The hospital's a huge opportunity, and through a town-wide master plan, we can identify other opportunities throughout the town that we should be following up on too.
The master plan is the old adage, and I've used it more than once, plan your work and work your plans. The master plan you had said earlier about 5 years, that's a long way to wait to create a master plan. I find that sooner the better, and then you start in increments and go from there. You know where you're going. It's like the yellow brick road, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I think the sooner that we can get it done, the better we'll be, and for that reason, I hope that the town will support the idea of allocating the funds to hire the professionals to work with the town to create the master plan for the town.
Well, I'm sure they would, because primarily that master plan could create an image that everybody can go for, rather than just sit around and wait on a piece of paper until it's completed.
And it affects so many different
True.
parts of the town too. I mean, it's not just, we're talking about affordable housing for seniors, but also the master plan to thinking about the hospital property, that's also the potential for recreation fields for families and for younger children. I think the master plan touches so many parts of the town that it's such an important component to have.
There's another very interesting planning process that's ongoing as well, which is the Cultural Alliance is talking about doing planning around the issue of branding for the town. And that's, as I've listened to the discussion of it, and as I understand it, it sounds like it's coming up with a quick description of your town in a way that it indicates to the rest of the world what we're all about, and then can be the focus of a concerted and integrated message to the rest of the world about who Medfield is and what we're all about.
Which I find is excellent. I've had visitors, friends of mine, that have come into Medfield, one in particular, and I drove him around the Medfield area, and he said, what a beautiful area, what a beautiful town. It makes one want to feel that they can really relax. And he said, they've done a beautiful job. And I said, yes, and they're going to continue to that. And he said, I might add, and he's from the West Coast, he said, I might add, now I'm going to quote him, this is a place where you want to settle, relax, and the rest of your life is well spent.
Excellent.
Moving on, past the master plan, the situation has arose more than once over the number of years, as you know, Pete. I know you have been working diligently on it, so has the other selectmen, and consequently, there is a finalization. And now, the hospital. What is going to transpire, and what are the ideas, and when?
There are a couple of things that are going on. There's sort of three main tracks that are going on about the hospital, all simultaneously. The one that is the longest standing, I guess, is the planning for what to do with the hospital.
Right.
That has been funneled down and narrowed down to this master planning committee that is a couple months into their work now. And they're on the cusp of hiring a planner to work with them to come up with the plan over the next 6 to 8 months as to what they're going to recommend should go at the state hospital. And the town's going to be asked to have input into all of that. Remember, it's ultimately the town meeting. The residents of the town are going to be the ones that are going to decide what happens to the state hospital. And it has to, any reuse of the hospital will go to the town meeting for a zoning change. And so at that point, the town will hear the recommendations of the committee, of the town government, and will say yes or no. We want this or we don't want that. So that's the planning process for the future reuse and redevelopment of the site. The second of the three prongs of what's been going on is the environmental cleanup. And there has been, that really got funneled down into this mediation process with DCAM that was very successful for the town over a course of a year-long series of mediation meetings. The town and DCAM, the state basically, came up with an agreement as to how to do the cleanup of the dump, basically. The hospital had been dumping in the wetlands next to the river for over 100 years, and the material was 15 to 17 feet deep of coal ash and just other trash. And that is all going to be brought up above the water line. That was the big concern of the town, was that this material was down below the water line, so that material is going to be all excavated, and a lot of it already has been, I gather, and it's going to be piled on site. This was the compromise that was worked out. Instead of shipping it off site, that the town would agree to have it kept there, but it's going to be piled above the water table at the site of where the power plant used to be. The power plant's been torn down, and then it'll be capped in that spot. This differs from the original state plan, which was they were going to just cap it in place, and the material would have been under the water table. Our most productive town well is about 3,000 feet away from this site. And so that we really wanted to make sure that there was no risk at all to that town well. This gets us to that result, that we're much more confident that the water systems aren't going to be impacted by all of this hazardous materials that have been disposed of over the 100+ years. So that the cleanup of the state hospital site is going to be finished fairly soon, I think. Well, certainly by next summer, I think it's going to be finished. I think they still have to dredge the oil. There was a diesel oil fuel spill into the river, and I think that might still have to get dredged out. I'm not positive about that, actually, whether that's happened yet or not. But most of the cleanup on the hospital property itself has already happened. The one exception is there were some volatile organic compounds that were apparently disposed of around the laundry building, which was on top of the hill overlooking the power plant area. And these were things that might well have been used in the cleaning process in the laundry. We don't know how they got disposed of, but they might have just gotten poured out on the ground or whatever. The way that you remediate these volatile organic compounds is by exposing them to air. And then there's a reaction that takes place, and they are rendered harmless. So that DCAM has been pumping reactants down into the ground through wells up there, and they have not been getting as good and as fast a result as they had hoped, so that the volatile organic compound issue is still ongoing. But it's hoped that will get solved very soon. I think that the expectation is that it's not going to go on for much longer. So that's the second leg of the three-legged issues that are going on at the state hospital, and the last one is the actual purchase of the state hospital. The town meeting voted unanimously to have the town buy the hospital, and once that vote happened, we then started working with the state to figure out exactly what the terms were going to be. And we still don't have what is effectively the purchase and sale agreement worked out yet. I think we're very close. We had a meeting with DCAM to negotiate things last Thursday. There's a negotiation committee, which I'm on, and 4 other members. And we ended our negotiation last Thursday at swords points, and we've since resolved the thing that was causing us to be disputed at that point, and so that we're still working out the language of this document. It's called a land disposition agreement because of the state land, but it's effectively a purchase and sale agreement, and we're getting close to working that out. So those are the three. I
know there was some concern about making sure that the agreement, the purchase had gone through at a certain point because of the timing in terms of like who was in charge of the committee that basically agreed to the sale. Once it passed the legislature, did that cover that aspect of it, or is these negotiations still part of it, and still is that something that's still of concern?
It's still of concern.
Okay.
If there was a new governor that came in and didn't want this to happen, that it could probably get stopped, is the fear, and so that the DCAM and the town are both working on a track where we are trying to make sure that it happens before the change in administrations. Yeah. And we're actually way in advance of that, because that'll be in January when that happens, and DCAM is actually trying to have the closing be before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And so that and that can happen if we can get this purchase and sale agreement done. Mm-hmm. And we're getting close on that. So
I have had a couple of questions. A couple of people have been up in the area. One in particular had asked, because that chapel is beautiful. There's no question about that. I was in the chapel. I don't know whether or not you've seen it or inside. It is beautiful. But this gentleman looked at me and he said, what about the other buildings? And I said, well, there is a committee, I understand, that will be analyzing the situation with each of those buildings as to whether or not to keep them or destroy them. Any information on that?
That's absolutely correct. The buildings are, I find them handsome. I like the brickwork. I worry that their condition is so deteriorated that it will be exceedingly expensive to reuse them. I think you can probably rehabilitate almost any building if you spend enough money, but I think it becomes economically prohibitive if the building condition is so poor.
That's what he had said, Pete.
So we'll see. We're having 4 of the buildings have been contracted to have a brief analysis done by a consultant as to their condition, and that consultant report is due any day now, and that'll give the town a little bit of a flavor as to what we might be facing with the buildings. I think that once the town owns the property, it might want to do a more substantial analysis of the buildings.
Well, that was the question, because
Yep. Everybody seems to have agreed that the chapel is such an iconic building
it is
that
beautiful.
it should be kept and used for some sort of community purpose.
That's what their thoughts
and,
were.
yeah. And unfortunately, there was a lot of damage to the chapel over the weekend, and people broke in, and it's the planning committee has heard recently from the woman who redeveloped Northampton State Hospital for mass development. Beth Murphy is her name, and from a gentleman who has a 20-year history on the Foxborough Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, and Hospital Reuse Committee. And both of these individuals said that the security of the properties was a big issue, that there was
Agreed.
a lot of vandalism at both Northampton and Foxborough State Hospital, so that we have to be ready to figure out a way to prevent people from destroying this.
And that was a concern that was expressed at town meeting too. I know that was something that several individuals had brought up in terms of the possibility of the costs being maybe higher than maybe expected, and just in terms of trying to ensure that the security around the property is taken care of, because obviously you don't want situations like what happened this weekend with vandalism and things like that.
DCAM says that they're spending $300,000 to $350,000 per year per hospital to maintain them, and I think about $250,000 of that is on the security. They have 24/7 security at the Medfield State Hospital, and then that's also for the snow plowing and the grass cutting and the maintenance that they do. I think that we're going to be in a better position because of having a police department that we can maybe task to do some of the patrols instead of using the private security details, and so that I'm hoping that we can do it for less than $350,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've got these people on staff at the DPW certainly that can keep the buildings boarded up.
You talked earlier about the town garage.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have done a marvelous job. And as we know, opening is Saturday. Now there's other specific areas we're contemplating: police department, fire department, and others. So next question to you, monetarily now, finances.
In terms of the public safety building,
Right, and plus the fire department, police department.
yeah, I mean, we're pretty far down the road in terms of planning for the new public safety building. It's going to go on the same site where the existing one is.
Yeah.
At the Selectmen's meeting last night, we were signing the lease of land down on West Street for the temporary police station for the interim. They're going to move out of the, I don't know exactly how the timing is going to work, but I guess the fire department, I think, is going to the new highway garage
Yeah, that's
temporarily. and the police are going down to West Mill Street, and I mean, we're going to, the renderings of the new public safety building, I think are handsome. I mean, it kind of mirrors the look of the town hall with the tower and the slope pitched roof on the top of the tower. It looks nice to me. I'm told that the space is appropriate for the needs of the police and the fire. The cost of it is based on the size of the building primarily, and so that my concern when it was first brought up was to make sure that we weren't building something that was too big for the needs. We have a very good group of people that are on this permanent building committee that are looking at all of these town buildings, and they look at it with a very educated and hard-nosed eye to saving monies for the town. And so that we have people that just have great backgrounds in terms of builders, architects, and engineers on the committee, and I think we're getting really good service from them in terms of their recommendations. And I think the public safety building is a little different than the highway building. The highway garage building wasn't really fully vetted through the permanent building committee. It was designed and then presented to that committee. This public safety building is one that has been created basically by this building committee of residents who have great experience and great dedication to what they're doing. I think they're going to convince the town that it is the right building, the right size, and unfortunately, it's what it is in terms of cost.
You've got a selectman meeting coming up, I'm quite sure, relative to this. I've had comments about, well, you're building this building and you're building that building, and all that's going to be costing the taxpayer an awful lot of money.
It is. It does.
And I didn't say anything. I just kind of tongue-in-cheek, nor did I nod. But the comments were, well, you have the fire department, you have the police department, maybe other construction areas. It's going to cost an awful lot of money, and that's going to cost us money.
Yep.
So finances is something else.
I mean, these buildings do cost money, and the reality is that we want them for our services that we think are appropriate to provide. And I guess that's where the town could have a discussion if it wanted to. We have a police force that is of a particular size, and if we have a police force and a fire department of a certain size, then you have a certain requirement of a size of a building to provide space for the employees, to provide space for the equipment. But ultimately, it's the town's decision as to how much of a fire department, how much of a police department, how much of a highway department do you want? As part of my role as a selectman in trying to figure out how to save money for the town, where so much of our town budget is personnel, I've looked at every department and asked that question. Do we have the right number of police officers? Do we have the right number of firefighters? Do we have the right number of people in the DPW? And I'm pretty convinced every time that I look at it that we are in the right place. The town's going to be asked in the future, I'm sure, whether or not they want to have a larger fire department. We have just 2 firefighters on at any particular time. A lot of other fire departments have a lot more firefighters on at any one time, so that if there is in fact a fire, then there's a staff really that's in place to get to the fire. We basically, with just 2 firefighter EMTs on duty at any one time, we basically have an ambulance service is mainly what we're doing.
I find Medfield per se is building. By that I mean popularity. The populace is growing, and I readily agree with what you say. But you get to a point where you look and you think, well, the fire department, that was the most difficult place to get in and out of that I had found. I had gone to inspect it and talked with the chief at the police department. And most definitely, they both need enlargement. And so I feel that things of that nature, it's not just, well, we're going to do it, it's a necessity. And that's my belief. And people that I have talked to do. Yet I have talked about people saying, well, gee, this is going to cost money. Well, it may cost money, but it's going to enlarge the factor that you need, whether it be a fire or a police. That's my opinion.
And in some cases, by building the new facilities, it can actually save the town money in the long run as well. The DPW garage, I think, is a good example because of the environmental concerns that were out there with the with the old garage. There was a lot of EPA regulations and different aspects of the law and regulations that were out there that the town needed to meet with the garage. And rather than making piecemeal changes by building the new facility, you meet all of those needs at once. I think with the public safety building, it's the same. There's similarities there, in terms of fitting the two departments into the one building, but also the modern need, the needs of a modern police and fire department, things like Wi-Fi and just the communications that are out there, things that they weren't thinking of 50, 60 years ago when they were building the buildings. I think that's one of the things that also gets added in when you're building a new facility. It's not just the building itself, but it's what you can do with the facility.
And our fire station and police station are so antiquated. I mean, the fire trucks barely fit. Right. The chief has to buy them a little bit smaller, I think, almost, to get them to make sure that they fit inside the doors. The police station has a jail cell that we're not permitted to keep prisoners in because it doesn't meet the requirements. We've been asking the police and the fire for a long time to live with less than they should be living with in terms of facilities. And both the chiefs have been very good about not pushing forward.
Well, gentlemen, I see that old clock on the wall is drawing our program to a close. What would you like to say before we say good evening?
I'll just mention that this morning I was at the high school. I got invited to Bonnie Wren Burgess's English class, where the students were debating a couple propositions. One had to do with medical research and the other with assisted suicide. And they were supposed to be using the principles of Pascal to debate these issues, pro and con. And it was so impressive to hear these sophomores talking about these issues in very logical and well-spoken, eloquent ways. I think we're doing a great job with the schools in Medfield when you hear the kids. So that was my experience this morning, and so I'm still very impressed with how well-spoken the kids from the schools are.
Josh?
Well, on Friday night, the 1964 Medfield High football team was honored their 50th anniversary of their undefeated season, and I think one of the things that we talked about today was the importance of keeping seniors and keeping the seniors in town and preserving that, the older residents. And I think Friday was a good example of why, is really preserving the history of the town, and being able to come together as the community and to celebrate an achievement from 50 years ago, to bring the players out. I think it's just a great example of what we were talking about and the need for keeping seniors here. And I just think it's a great example of what Medfield's all about as well, to be able to celebrate that history. And I think it was just a great event and a great night. So I think it was a good salute to that team and to Medfield High and the community as a whole.
I think Richard DeSorga was sort of the moving force behind that, and it was a wonderful event. I mean, I think that the players from that team seemed like they were having a blast. So it really was fun to see how successful that was.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Perry.
Peterson.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
This is Jack Peterson, wishing you and yours the very best. Good night.
Hi, I'm Jeff Marsden, and you're watching Medfield.tv.